My own enterprise architect, because I moved roles from within US Cellular from IT to business, and I was very much a fan of let's make the business model work and all that. When I moved roles, my own enterprise architect, I could not understand why he was coming to me with certain requests. Okay. So he would say things like, I need a CMDB, a configuration management database, because all the artifacts and the last LAN cable will be measured. Okay, it will be really effective and things like that. So I'll say, well, I am doing product architecture for a price plan for a mobile company to roll out. How does that connect? His name was Andy. How does that connect, Andy? He's like, no, Ashwin, that's different. We are just asking for your support in the exec council that you will support this CMDB initiative. And much to my amazement, I would not be able to support that. There was another case around identity and access management. The entire business case made in that particular situation was only about identity management will help streamline headcount and access rules and administration effort for IT. There was hardly anything about what we will get for the business. And obviously the person knows that, but still when they communicate, this gap exists. Okay. This is from a survey that I just picked on while preparing for this. Happy CEOs, delusional about CIO's performance. So, and 78% of the CEOs surveyed says that they are happy with what the CIOs do. There's some interesting comment on the second half. Fewer than half of them have any confidence that IT will be a contributor in their business success. Okay, so there's an interesting dichotomy on what they believe versus and what is expected. They kind of, in my view, perhaps to put it a little bluntly, they expect very less. So the bar sometimes kind of moves. I don't want to generalize. Obviously, there are many cases where the partnership might be superb, but this we see in our CIO advisory function. Wherever we have talked to folks, this is a huge challenge. Okay, people have said they are happier, and the happiness is mostly that they stay out of my way, some things work, and they come only during budget time. Okay. So with that, we'll get into a little bit of when we polled some folks on what are some new generation CIOs doing to kind of connect the gap or bridge the gap. Some key things emerged. Again, these are not rocket science, these are not something new. You all are probably doing it in your own roles, but I'll set it up and then we can have a quick. So this is again, we are hearing a lot from folks that the next year's budgets will have this spend, both all across Europe, US, and to increasingly beginning to increase in the Indian context as well. So come out with a few themes that we are seeing that how, and this is coming polling the business folks, okay, polling all of the guys who are talking about how their counterparts in IT are making a difference. So now the other question we have asked folks is, how do you think they are getting success in this? Why are their counterparts listening to some of these conversations, either in enterprise mobility or in customer experience in terms of kind of managing end to end? Why is that? So most of them, what we found is the surest way to fail in pushing any of this is to talk about the technology. Hey, we've got a real-time solution. It really is a very good dashboard. It looks very good in the iPad. You can really change all these things with a flick of a button, and all of these things will work. You can bet that the business won't buy it. Now, unfortunately, in that case, they are the buyers. Okay, most of the folks who we have shared and have conversations with them on this, they are talking about it hardly in technology. They are saying, for example, in customer experience, I'll relate a case of a poultry farmer. Okay, poultry business. His IT manager is not even the CIO, is talking to him more about getting the reach into the South American markets using mobile and customer experience technologies. Okay, so when their sales rep are there in this LATAM location, how are they able to survey and manage customer experience live so that actions can be taken? There is one more example of VGuard, where in VGuard the IT manager is talking about taking real-time live customer experience feedback on a mobile device, and not even talking about any back-end technology in its business case. Okay, so those are some cases where we are seeing how these technologies, even though they are all IT and all that good stuff, is only presented as something that will help the business connect with its end consumer better. Now again, not new, but seems to still hold true. All right. So as I conclude, I thought I'll leave you with some basic, bring it back to leadership, where I started my conversation with you on. Okay. So we'll talk about the first two. So what doesn't get measured doesn't get done. Okay, this again you've heard it before, but you'll be surprised that there are so many functions within IT that do not do this, that are not able to shine a mirror to their own operations and then demonstrate the leadership that I am willing to take account for some of the failures. Okay, arm yourself and your top team with the right tools. So what does this mean? This goes all the way back for building the next level of leaders that I talked about, and also educating them on the business. Okay, so you'll have many folks who join your team. I'm sure some of you are already doing it, but in many cases we have recommended to customers saying, get them to business training. For example, there is like a pharma contract research organizations. They are sending their employees to train on that particular domain, and you would not believe the amount of difference it makes. So that if this training is co-attended by somebody who is, let's say, a PhD in pharma sciences, and you've got an IT guy come and attend and at least share that experience, may not be as technical, the outcomes are very good. Okay, so it's not only right tools in MIS and all, it's tools about your people. So the next is business literacy for IT. This I don't want to speak much. I have many folks have talked. You all are aware of it, but somehow it always comes across the business that IT talks technology. If there is a way to change that, do look at it. I'll talk a little bit about point 2. This is something that if we can get good at, it will be good in terms of what is called brutal honesty. Now, how good is the own IT function in terms of what it provides? This is very difficult. I cannot tell you the number of conversations I've had with CXOs, CIOs. When the first time you meet them, it's mostly like, hey, this my organization. In fact, I've had invitations from folks saying, come and measure my organization. Actually, I'm so strong and so well supported that I'll do really well. And when we do this concept called voice of the customer, we meet them, then we meet the business. The results 9 times out of 10 is not that good. Okay, so it's without sounding preachy, this is something for you guys to consider thinking about. And then the last thing to kind of tie it back to the 2x2 model. See, we talked about the integration role, innovation, infrastructure, and intelligence. Okay, how I would leave you guys with is, this is something where if you look at the new evolution of role, we see these 4 themes primarily play an important role in the CIO's job. So if you can apply those 4 frames, and there is detail behind it, if you can feel free to talk to me about it, or you can research it out yourself. You, based on the situation, consciously apply that filter, apply that lens, and then if you bring it back to the model I have shared with you around strategist, outcome-oriented, people driver, and teacher, if you filter that here and really try to take it for that particular situation, now there is a good chance it might work. Thank you.
Ashwin, do we have about 5 minutes for a couple of questions? Any questions from the audience?
Hi Ashwin, this is Venki. Question, and you probably have lived through some of this. The last 2 or 3 years, we've seen the economy go belly up maybe more than a couple of times. How much of the second or the third slide is probably reality even in today's age and time? Because most of us as CIOs are probably 80% of the time cutting costs, and we call it by different names, sexy names, but that's what we're doing. So while there are organizations investing in new technology and going the next step forward, how much of this paradigm that you're talking really changed, and have you seen it happen, or people are still saying, no, it's like a denial, are a lot of us in the denial state?
So two things, Yeah, so while that reality is true, okay, cost containment is going to happen for every business, or as they are more mature and maybe the CAGRs don't match. But that doesn't mean that from a leadership and initiative angle you can't use some of these things. Okay, so there are I would characterize it as two different lenses or perspectives. Okay, so for example, there are cases where we have seen, one of them is in APAC, where cost containment became an opportunity for folks to relearn and retool themselves. So now there are two ways. Once if you are like a complete like, hey, what, I have to do this job, I have to do 10% give back to the budget every year, you can take a defeatist mentality. And I have to say, pardon me for saying that, most of the IT folks have a tendency to be like that. Okay? Maybe it's the sense of humor or the sense of reality, whatever it is. Many folks in the front line don't work like that. Okay? So in my experience with a set of customers, that actually depends on the leadership style of the leader. So you will have many times when nobody is watching, you would say things to your team, yaar wo 10% kuch karna hai, just do it. Yeah. Business, I don't agree with all this, but you do it. Okay. And it's not to answer to me, but you have to be true to yourself whether that happened to you or not. Okay. And more often than not, I found that folks who are more upbeat about and practical about what they want to get done, this paradigm still holds. Okay. Especially on the innovation side. We have had one case where one gentleman took his IT budget, this 85 that split, and came up with a proposal and an action item to measure himself to what he called flipping the triangle back. So if you draw a triangle, the base of the triangle 80% is roughly infrastructure cost. What he committed to do through scorecard is, I'll take X savings, cost containment out, but you have to give me business some freedom to take it into innovation. Don't get it back to bottom line. Okay. So, and once that happened, two things happened. His employees or his team members started getting more upbeat, saying, okay, I'm able to work on the latest mobile or mobility solution, whatever the thing went. So it depends. It depends in the sense it's up to that person's leadership style.
Man, Venki, that was a very sexy dialogue you had. Just taking a phrase out of your question. Thanks. Any other questions?
Hi, Ashan. My name is Prakash. In your slide, one of them talked about some survey you had related to CEOs.
Yes.
And they talked about they are happy the performance of CIOs.
Yes.
But they are not too, the second part, maybe can you give some insight into that?
Yes.
I don't know whether it is confidential to your company, but...
So what it was is two parts of that. See, when you ask all this in multiple choice questions and things like that, there are two parts. One is CXO level, the business leader likes what IT is doing on an average. Okay, but this is across US as well. It's not just India. Okay, so it's a little broader context.
Yeah.
You can take it for how it may apply to India or not. Okay. The other is they are not expecting much, because what they said is repeatedly lack of project delays. I'll fill the survey had a lot of questions on project delays. Okay, project delays when an IT project, ERP, 18 months. Suppose it doesn't happen. All of those kinds of stuff. So this is taken from that context. Really upsets the image of the IT department. So what then people try to do, and you'll see that, I don't know if it happens in your organizations or not, what is called is desktop IT. You'll have a vendor coming in, especially with a quick iPad or an Android type solution, saying, Mr. Product Line Manager, take this. It sits on your laptop, it will do quick analytics. All you need is a feed from some ERP that will help, and I'll set that up for you. So those are symptoms that business does not expect much. Okay, so it doesn't mean to say it happens everywhere, but that is the thing. So what they say is, yeah, they are happy, things are working, data center costs are getting cut, 10% budget give back is there. But more than that, I am not asking them to help me with innovative business things. I am asking the vendor directly, and that I think is dangerous. What we call desktop, under the desk IT keeps happening. It may not happen in your organization, but if repeated delays, lack of communication, if you all are at the apex of the organization having some communication challenges, let's say 5 or 10%, believe me, your teams are in much worse shape. Okay, so that is something as we talked about. So that also came up in that survey.
Ashwin, in your last slide, you talked about the 5 steps of the part. So just want to reflect on a couple of things. Today with the introduction of the disruption technologies, things like enterprise mobility, cloud, so many things are coming. Most often than not, at least we have experienced that people talk about that they want everything to come on iPad, mobile, everything. So the question is that if you try to dig deep into that, understand what is that everything, what is the, everything means that it's not everything under the sun. So what exactly is it? So I'm trying to reflect on between the 3rd step and the 4th step, and understanding, say that, okay, business, we need to teach the business to the IT team, not the technology is not the solution. But the perception which at least we have experienced some of the cases is that people come with the technology as a problem to us rather than the business requirement itself. So how do you reflect on from this perspective onto your thoughts? Just wanted to understand.
Yeah, that's an interesting point, because see, but that is the larger phenomena in my view. This is just my opinion. Is what you see in the concept. I'll make it broader. Okay, BYOD, bring your own device to work, for example. That is an outcome of this phenomena where we call the prosumer. Okay. The professional who is a consumer, once he enters your employment in your organization, he or she has better, faster phones and connectivity than, let's say, the enterprise can provide. Okay, and many times it's kind of your CEO. They'll go somewhere, get some nice gadget. It will have some hook into something and say, you know what? Can you make this work too and give me the dashboard here? So that is one example of technology kind of being so pervasive that it can come the reverse way. The other harmful tendency which I see is that because you can't control it, you have vendors and whoever, again, vendors are doing the right job. Everyone can speak to everyone. You read some blog, something about, let's say, a nice dashboard that can work somehow, somewhere, and you want it. Okay, so my observation or experience from how this can be solved by IT is you have to have what is called, I'll make it some roles such as business relationship managers. Okay, folks who are business in your organization, if you are a big enough, or small, obviously can adapt, who speak and evangelize these technologies to the business. Okay, so what does that do? That will limit the case where somebody comes and says, okay, this technology already vendor X, Y, Z I've seen it in the internet, what can you do for me? Rather, it will be your guy saying, look, here are some things that I would want to do a lunch and learn session, or I want to explain that to you without any budget requests or any business case. Okay, without any agenda, I want to explain that to you. So those are some basic steps to counter that challenge. But I don't think honestly it can be just addressed. Okay, it's like this is something that you're faced with the carrot and the stick. Okay, if you don't implement it, you're late and not able to deliver. If you implement it, it's like, well, what other important thing do you trade off? It's a trade-off, yeah.
What you need versus what you want.
Yes, yes. But we have seen some places where it has worked. I can't prescribe it because it is a situation on that. In FedEx, for example, it works very well when their business architects evangelize technology. Okay? But may not work in another logistics company.
We take further questions offline. Ashwin's going to be around, and you would want to discuss further with him. We could do it over the drinks over the evening. Ashwin, on behalf of the entire Bangalore chapter governing committee and the members of the chapter, thank you very much for taking your time out on a weekend, and that was pretty good. Now move on to the next set of activity for the evening, and this is where our partner community comes in. They're very, very important to us. the club, all of us, our activities is not going to be complete without our partners coming in, standing with us when we need them to take our goals, our vision, our activity forward. So we have two of the partners coming up to talk about themselves, the product, the services in their offering, and what they would want to convey to the gathering here. We start with IBM. We have, sorry. Oh, no, okay. From IBM, we have Mr. Dharani Balam Gurunathan. Dharani, as he's called, or prefers to be called, is the Vice President Offering and Cloud Service Sales, part of the Global Technology Services India South Asia at IBM. Dharani started his career with Tata Steel, 20 plus years of experience, 13 years in IBM, and based out of Bangalore, he handles their services business. A quick round of applause for Dharani to come onto the stage, please.
Sure. Yes. It's
What
my dad's name.
It's your dad's name, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Pleasure meeting you. My dad's also called Gurunath.
Excellent. That's
Good.
really good. So, thank you guys, and let me begin by congratulating the CIO Club for its first anniversary and the Bangalore chapter. I've been personally pretty closely associated with the CIO Club in the Delhi chapter, the Bombay chapter, so fairly familiar with them. Have spoken in a couple of occasions. Some of them called me up, so really want to kind of make that connect in Bangalore as well. I mean, which is where I stay. Exactly, right? So this is a great time to be here. I would, and although there are slides, right? So I am kind of more comfortable actually walking down, between you, within you, so we could really talk, the business issues and see how we could somewhere correlate to what IBM has to offer, right? Coming straight out of fresh and straight out of the Smarter Planet event, which we organized in Gurgaon just about a couple of days back, where our chairman came. So one thing which is very important, and that's where we really connect, is it's not about IT anymore, right? IT is just about a means. It's a means, it's a method, right? And you can't do away with it, right? So, and how do you go ahead and establish that fact? Well, IBM runs on a regular basis what we call the CEO study, right? And the trend which we've seen is CEOs about 5 to 10 years back, right, really looked at top priorities, growing revenue anyway, all those elements. In that list, IT apparently featured 6th, about 5 to 6 years back, as a key element which is going to help them become successful. From a 6th position, this has now become the second most critical and important element for the CEO, right? And no sooner, I guess, we will start seeing the CEOs actually call on you, the CIOs, to say, help me build a business strategy for me, right? And that's where is the point where I'm saying it's not about IT anymore, it's about business, right? And therefore, and it's no longer about application and infrastructure, and all of them essentially come together. And that's the fundamental of what we really talk about Smarter Planet, right? And Smarter Business, where come to think about it, we are talking and we are dealing with real life everyday issues that we go through, rather than just look at the constrained elements of what is it that I need to do, my basic, how do I go ahead and roll out SAP in another 20 branches within the 3-month window. Gone are those days. I'm not saying they are not important, they are important, but I guess that is not some of the priorities which are on the top of your mind. I mean, raise of hands, how many of you think what I said is right? Right? How many of you think what I said was right and associate with me? Or how many of you think rolling out SAP on another critical application or making another 20 branches live is the most or the highest priority line item for a CIO in their job, with a bound time frame? Highest priority of rolling out critical applications. Is that? No? Okay. So how many of you actually participate in working with the top brass of your organization, with the board members or the CEOs making business decisions? Wow, there you go. Right? So pretty much, the trend which I've seen in all other locations, and come to think about it, with a special focus to India, right? The difference which I see versus what's typically happening in the global context with CIOs versus what's happening in the India context, or so to say the growth markets context, is that in the growth markets there is this urge, there is this fire in the belly thing which says I don't want to go ahead and do what want to kind of walk through and put my step on every single rung on the ladder, which probably a CIO equivalent did in the developed markets, right? So it's essentially about leapfrogging, right? How do I leapfrog and implement, learn from the best practices, and really become a globally integrated enterprise? And that's what is really happening, right? So that's more of the trend which I have seen. What I am going to talk to you all today about, God help me, right, is about evolving business needs, the imperatives for partnership, turning challenges to opportunities, the value of IBM technology and services we'll touch upon if you think is necessary, right, and where you think is necessary, and then charting the path forward. This is what I want to leave with you all, and again, this is a context where I want to kind of check whether you all associate with these issues or challenges. How many of you, this is better, how many of you really associate with some of the challenges which are really mentioned there? I mean, do you see an increased demand from your organization to say, hey, Mr. CIO, please don't force me to use what desktop you're going to push it onto me. I want to bring my device and I want to use my device. Allow me the mobility, right? Is that an increasing pressure? Okay. Executives also have latched on to this, so there is pressure from the top and there is pressure from the bottom also. So it's like, right? So that is something which I thought I'll check with you all. Come to think about it, digital content, right? Reuse of digital content is something which is again becoming an extremely high requirement, and is becoming more and more imperative to really go ahead and have, right? 2.7 zeta bytes of digital content. I'll come to this point and make a comment there. I'm talking about my days when I used to do some programming, right? We used to really sit down, diligently write code, right? If it were COBOL, we will start from identification division downwards, correct? And then we came to the C, C++, Javas of the world, and then, but still code used to get written. Code today is not written, correct? Fresh meat is downloaded, right? So most code is actually downloaded. Most content is downloaded and worked upon. So there is more reuse of content which is really happening. And what's critical here is, or what's important here is, while this throws a significantly huge opportunity, what is the guarantee that the downloaded code is good for your organization? Is clean enough for you to include it as part of your enterprise application? How many of you worry about this every day? This is if I'm not wrong, I saw 3 hands there. So if you've not come across this, let me tell you, this is one of the largest source of security breach, information theft, which is happening